Hello, everybody. Welcome to SoCal Loopers. Today we're talking with Jon Fawcett, who developed Loop Follow. It is Sunday, July 12th. In California, it's 5 p.m. We have four of the admins that are part of SoCal Loopers. There we go. Glenn Weber, he can wave at you. He's had type 1 for 45 years.
Hello.
Cassidy Robinson, she's had type 1 for, I think, 27 years, maybe 28. Sarah Goya has had it for 28 years, maybe 29, because as the longer we go, the more time we accumulate. And I've had type 1 for about 55 and a half years. So in total, we have about 155 years of type 1 as admins on SoCal Loopers. What I do every time is the disclaimer. The Loop is a do-it-yourself closed loop algorithm and user interface developed through the work of community volunteers. While it may seem obvious, please consult with your healthcare professionals regarding your diabetes management. Remember, this is a highly experimental project not approved for therapy by the FDA. You take full responsibility for building and running your system, and you do so at your own risk. The guidelines, so I'll just put this up. Please keep yourself muted because there'll be a lot of people that will be putting information into chat. If you have questions, put them in chat. The admins will be watching them and bumping in, and then we'll try to do a Q&A at the end. Jon Fawcett is joining us today from Ohio. He's the developer of Loop Follow. Jon's daughter is 14, apparently going on 25, according to him. She's had type 1 diabetes for 2.5 years, started on Omnipod last May, and was looping within 2 weeks. Jon's an interesting guy. He's a design engineer and founder of Fuse Chicken, makers of products designed for life, durable, reliable, beautiful charging cables and chargers. And they are. You can go on his website and take a look. If you want more, you can ask him about why he picked Fuse Chicken. That's an inside story from him, but he will share. All right, I'm going to turn this over. Jon, thank you so much for joining us. It's all yours.
Okay, thank you for having me. Let me just get my screen sharing set up here. I've got a simulator running. Okay, so I have this running in an iPad simulator, just so that I can show you the landscape stuff on an iPad as well. Loop Follow, it'll probably look very familiar. It's laid out similarly to Nightscout, same data. A lot of parents that I know, and we have a Northeast Ohio Loop group that has a lot of parents in it, and we all talk. We've got Dexcom Follow, Spike, SugarMate, NightGuard, NS Apple, If This Then That, and Pushover to handle basically everything. There might even be others. Oh yeah, I forgot Nightscout X or Safari to access Nightscout directly. So I've always been so fed up with, Spike has always had the absolute best alerts, hands down better than everybody else. But when they ran into the issues with the Apple entitlements and the signing, it stopped getting updated. The Watch app stopped working. There's been a lot of issues with that. NS Apple is fabulous to show some of the more Loop dedicated details on the Apple Watch. SugarMate was kind of my backup for getting that phone call, that text message for an urgent low in case all the other apps crashed. So it really hit me that why isn't there one app that kind of handles everything from a Loop perspective? And even for non-loopers or people that aren't set up with Nightscout, there's a lot of benefits just even from having better alarms than any of the other apps can have. So I'm just going to step through the features. You can throw the questions and comments in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. But other than that, we'll just step into the features now. So you'll see fairly standard layout that you're probably familiar with Nightscout, but we've got some extra stuff from what you're going to be familiar with seeing on your Dexcom Follow app or those. So BG, and this is live numbers dealing with Froyo an hour ago. So 247BG, the trend arrow, the delta, the reading time. We also have the loop status and the loop prediction. And then on the right, all of the standard loop info that as a parent, I want to see in a quick glance. And I'm going to mention a lot of this for parents or caregivers, but prediction, we do have people that are using it. On the right, all of the standard, I'm getting an echo, sorry. We do have people that are using it where the person with type 1 is using it because it has better alerts or because of the watch functionality that you can get to get your readings on your watch, get your readings on CarPlay and things like that. Underneath that, the graph has all of the data that you're going to have in Nightscout. So you've got the standard BG readings, then you've got the boluses, the carbs, orange and blue. You will notice I have temp basals going on and automatic boluses going on. My daughter's running on a customized version of automatic bolus that switches between temp basals to automatic bolus as she gets higher. So don't be alarmed at that. Scheduled basal, just like Nightscout, is in the dashed line. And then down here we have the overrides that are running, so a 110 override. And this is similarly to if you've used Night Guard or some of the other apps, you can pinch to zoom and zoom in and zoom out, click to drag to scroll. The bottom small graph, just like Spike, is just a click to drag across that. At the bottom, we've got kind of the fairly standard stats. We do have standard deviation that is going in this last spot. It's not quite ready to be pushed to dev yet, but that is coming. And then I'm going to come back to, along the bottom of the tabs, I'm going to come back to alarms and just show you some of the settings really quick. So we do have, obviously, Nightscout URL. We do have the ability to run with tokens if you're using that for more security. And then also a toggle between MGDL and the millimeters. And then a lot of standard things that I'm not going to cover, such as whether you want your BG text colored, coded, green, yellow, red, or just white. The app does follow dark mode automatically on the phone, and I'm just going to swipe it closed and show you the difference. So it will automatically follow dark mode if you turn that on or off, or you can force it to always use dark mode if you prefer your phone not in dark mode and your app in dark mode. Persistent notification is something that I sort of took from Xtrip, if any of you have used that, where on Android you can have this notification that's always shown. Apple doesn't quite allow you to do it the same way. It will send a notification every 5 minutes, but one of the benefits is if you turn off having the pop-up notifications at the top of the screen and turn it on to show them on the lock screen, at any time you can just tap your lock screen and your BG reading will be right there on the lock screen, always as the latest. Keep screen active is really for nightstand mode. So, and it's obviously would be pretty bright without being in dark mode. So let me flip that back. So I've made the tab that's called the snoozer tab. I'm trying to close the app to essentially be your nightstand mode. So if a lot of people just have their app, they leave their phone open, screen unlocked, put it on this tab, and your BG reading's always right there. The alerts show up right here for the alert that's going off and the snooze as well. And then one of the reasons this is a build yourself app rather than being available in the App Store is what I've done with the background refresh. Loop Follow does use a lot of background battery use. So I have an iPhone 11 Pro. I can get through the day with it. If you've got an SE, you might need to recharge throughout the day. But we've done it in such a way that it's almost certain that iOS will never kill this app in the background. So I've been running it for a month straight and have not yet encountered a time when iOS has killed it in the background. We have one user in the UK who woke up to the phone actually shut off before iOS tried to kill the app, which is a good thing. That's what we want. We want to have those alerts always be going off and not risking that the app got closed. Display app badge, that's pretty self-explanatory. That also lets you not have to actually open the app to see what the app reading is. You can see right there on the app badge is 246. Now, if you're running MMOL, iOS doesn't let you do periods in the badge number because those are technically a notification count. So don't be alarmed if it says 76, that means 7.6. Or if it says, don't be alarmed if it says 45, that means 4.5, which is not an unreasonable reading. At user's request, we added Speak BG, and we are going to come back and add some more features to this. Currently, it just with every 5-minute reading, it will say your BG is 75 or whatever in the units you're using. We are going to add the trend to that, and we're also going to add, if you want it to be every reading or potentially every other reading, every third reading. And a lot of people have asked for that because of when they're exercising. If their phone's out, they have their AirPods in, it'll just read the BG as they're doing their exercise. Some display functionality, and there's a lot of variations you can do with this. You can display dots or lines. You can have it display varying hours of prediction. For newer loopers, I know they like to look at the longer prediction to make sure they're doing things right. For the people that have been using Loop a little longer, they might not want more than 30 minutes of that prediction. And then just some things having to do with the scale of the display. For instance, do you want your basal underlying here to basically fill the full screen, or do you want it more like Nightscout where it's kept entirely down at the bottom? So you can really adjust this, putting the override bars at the top, at the bottom, just about anywhere you want. The one of the really nice features I like is to calendar, and I use Apple Watch, and I'm going to see if I can share this super quickly. So this is the display that Loop Follow is running to my watch. And if you've used Spike or Sugarmate, it's very similar. Sugarmate had the least information, Spike had a little more. I've come and added some even extra information that we can get from Loop, such as you can see 130% override. It's currently open loop, you can see at the end of the second row. And so turning on the BG to calendar function, and let me flip back to the other screen now. Turning on the BG to calendar function, the text underneath it, and I don't know if it's too hard to read on your screen now, uses variables. You can set this to display however you want. So it's just like %BG%, that will get replaced with your current BG reading. % delta % will get replaced with the delta. So all of these variables, you can customize the information you want to display on your watch, and that's what it will display. It'll save it to the calendar with that information, and then that'll display on your watch. You can also use it for CarPlay by putting the calendar app in your CarPlay display. The settings underneath are more debug settings, so I'm not going to go into those. I will show you the Nightscout tab next. We incorporated the Nightscout tab primarily because there's always going to be some features that may not make sense to throw into Loop Follow, such as the full reporting that Nightscout can do. There's no need to have a separate Nightscout X app. That's essentially what this tab is. There's no need to go open it in Safari. You can have it all right here in one app. The main things that really you still need to use this tab for, and this would be primarily for parents and caregivers, not necessarily loopers, are going to be setting your overrides. So if you set an override, just click into the Nightscout tab, pick your temporary target, or if you're canceling it, and then set it right through there. And then for everyone that's using it, either the looper or the parent, is your pump site chains and your CGM sensor start. And you want to make sure you use CGM sensor start, not insert. Insert's really geared for the people that are restarting. And the sensor start is going to trigger your 10-day Dexcom timer. And we'll get to that a little bit more when we talk about the alarms. The alarms are the biggest section that I've focused on with this, because even with Spike, which has quite a lot of alarm options, there were a few that I just felt like were missing. There were some where, for instance, overrides, I was using if this then that and pushover to have Nightscout write the Google Sheets when an override was started, and then another if this and that that read when that Google Sheet was changed, the temporary override spreadsheet, and then that sent a pushover to trigger to my phone. So I've got 2 if this then that apps and pushover running just to get notified when an override starts. This builds it all right into the same function. So the first 4, those are all pretty self-explanatory. The one thing I have done is we do have a persistence for the standard high alert. So that is if you want it to delay before triggering. So I currently have this set at 60 minutes. So when my daughter hits 180, it will not go off immediately. It'll go off an hour after that if she's still 180 or over. And the urgent high is a backup for that, because the urgent high will trigger even if it's still under the persistent time length for the high alert. On all the alerts, we have sound settings. If you've used Spike, you'll notice this is a very, very familiar list. It's the same sounds that Spike uses. And then all alerts can be snoozed, pre-snoozed individually, or when they are snoozed, you can adjust the snooze individually by simply picking what time you want the snooze to end. And so when an alert goes off, for instance, the high alert, I have it set to default to 60 minutes of snooze. It'll automatically set this time to 60 minutes in the future. And then as soon as that time hits, it'll turn off the snooze and it'll be able to trigger again, or you can set it individually per different alerts as you want. The no readings alert, that should be self-explanatory. That's the same as Dex when the readings are out. Fast drop and fast rise. I have added something that not every app has here, and that is to use BG limits. So for instance, on a fast drop, pre-loop, I would be concerned at 150 at a fast drop. Post-loop, I'm not really concerned until probably 90. And so knowing that loop is going to catch this, I don't need woken up in the middle of the night if my daughter has a late night snack, has a little bit of a spike from carbs and starts coming down fast, but she's 150, because loop will be able to catch that. So you can adjust the delta and then over how many readings. So for instance, this is dropping by 10 or more over 3 readings, and it will only trigger if the BG of that last reading is 95 or under. And the same thing applies for the fast rise, but the only difference is the BG limit is when it's over that BG amount. So you don't need this going off if she's 70 and eats a bowl of cereal and has a spike up to 120. It's loop's going to catch up with that. But if she's 200 and does that, we want the alert going off. My absolute favorite alert as a parent is the temporary alert. And this is something that I haven't seen any app that has. It's a one-time alert, and is basically you turn this alert on and it will trigger as soon as the condition is hit. There's no snooze on it. It just disables it after that's hit. And here's where I use that. If my daughter's stuck on a high, going to bed, and we might open loop and dose 4 units, and she's usually about 1 unit to 1.5 units per hour basal rate. So we might dose a ton of basal because nothing's bringing her down. In the past, we would just wait up until she came down, and when she hit about 150, we would know we needed to close loop so that then loop could cut basal and start kind of coasting her into that landing, where we know if we just dose a bunch and loop cuts basal right away at say 250, by the time that insulin starts hitting, she's needed all of that for basal and she stays high, or she might only drop down to 180. So what this does is, as a parent, and even as a direct looper, if you encounter this, when you wake up in the middle of the night to a high, so for instance, 150, I know that's my magic number for our daughter. I turn this on and loop follow will now trigger this alert the moment she drops to 150. I don't have to edit my low alert or edit my high alert. And then half the time when we did that, we'd forget to change it back. So this is a one time you can use for any situation. You can use it if you're exercising, and when you're exercising, you want to be alerted at maybe a slightly higher number than your normal low setting. Specifically, we use it at night when we know we have to open loop and give a lot of insulin to bring her down, but then we can not have to stay awake and still have that peace of mind that this is going to trigger and wake us up when we need to get up to closed loop. And then, I'm going to let this alarm go off so that you can see how the alarms work. And I'm going to try to turn my volume down just in case. I apologize in advance if this is super loud. No, here, I can do this. While we're waiting for that to trigger, some other loops, not looping alert. This comes same from the if this then that pushover combination. And there we go. So this is what an alert screen looks like. Your alarm goes off, you get the name of the alert, snooze button. In the case of the temporary alert, it just disables it. There's no snooze, but on other alerts, it will snooze it for however long you had selected. So the not looping alert, normally people use the if this and that method that's listed in the loop docs, and then that triggers a pushover notification. Some limitations on that, if you're a caregiver using an iPhone, you can't get that through do not disturb, so you can't get not looping overnight necessarily. So as a parent, you maybe have an Android device sitting around just to be able to get that extra alert. This allows it to go through do not disturb. And I've added BG limits to not looping. I don't want to be woken up if she's a perfect 100 and not looping and a flat line. Like, let it go. But so if she's outside of this preset range where I know she's safe and it's a perfectly fine number that loop, she rolled over and Riley Link's not connecting, it doesn't matter if basal's keeping her perfectly steady. But if she drops underneath the lower BG or over the higher BG for the amount of time that loop needs to be disconnected that you list, it'll trigger this alert. Now, one that I know a lot of parents might be interested in is missed bolus. I know my daughter is down at the kitchen table shoving Lucky Charms in her face and then dosing. And then not even just that, but you have the times when you don't notice that the bolus failed. I've noticed it's gotten significantly better than it was when we first started looping 1.5 years ago, but there are still times when the bolus failed, you didn't notice. So it's pretty complicated, but it essentially looks for how long do you want to wait until triggering this from carb entry? And then how far back before the carbs do you want to allow a pre-bolus to count for? So if you normally wait 20 minutes to eat, it'll use that insulin from 20 minutes earlier than the carbs as a bolus and not trigger this. For automatic bolus branch, we also have the ability to ignore all the small ones. So depending on what your AVs are coming in at, you can adjust this value to kind of catch all of those small ones that it's doing automatically. And then also we needed the ability to ignore low treatments that I know some people enter them, some people don't, but if you enter low treatments, we also don't need this triggering on every low treatment as well. And so we have the ability to ignore under a certain number of grams and also under a certain BG. The next two are sensor age and cannula age. These I absolutely love because we always get to day 7 or 8 and we're constantly looking to see when it expires. So these two actually run based on hours. Hold on just one second. Lisa, can you ask Lily to close loop? Had to happen. I've got her readings right there. So it's time to close loop. So the sensor change will alert in a number of hours before either the 10-day or the 3-day. So this is set to alert 8 hours before it and snooze for 2 hours. And then on my cannula age, I have it set to alert us 4 hours ahead of time and then 2 hours ahead of time. And then the last two are also from the if this then that pushover, and that is if an override starts or an override ends. And as a parent, these are important to know because sometimes she'll start an override on her own when she's low, and I may want to know that because something's coming up where I know she shouldn't be dosing on that. And other times when it might accidentally get turned off and we want it on. So this will alert you when it's turned on or turned off. The last, let me see how many, missed bolus through the end all have an extra option called use quiet hours. And this is sort of like do not disturb for specific alerts. And I didn't originally have this. I added this when my daughter's sensor change alert went off at 3 o'clock in the morning. And this woke me up as she had to change it at like 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. And I got woken up in the middle of the night with this alert. So I decided to add this for non-critical, non-BG alerts where you can simply say what time to turn that on in the evening, what time to turn it off in the morning, and any alert that turns on use quiet hours, when it hits that time in the evening, it will automatically process a snooze on it until the end time the next day. So it will essentially snooze it until your end time. So you can always turn it off. If you know you have to change your sensor in the middle of the night for some reason, you can always come back and disable this. But in general, those are the alerts that you don't necessarily need to be alerted to. And you saw it just disabled it, and that was actually because it hasn't reached the 10:30 p.m. yet. And then only a few more things here. The next is a snooze all. So you can snooze all alerts until an end time, and that will just stop everything from going through until that end time. You're walking into a business meeting, into church, wherever you might be going that you don't want those alerts going off. The app inactive is the last alert that I have, and this is one that I actually haven't been able to test. This sort of comes from Spike. It's trying to trigger an alert if iOS kills the app in the background. Unfortunately, well, I guess fortunately, I have yet in a month to have iOS kill the app in the background. So I don't know that alert is needed or not. And then the last two settings, you can choose to force an override volume level, and this will work directly through Do Not Disturb. So as a parent, let Do Not Disturb turn on, silence all the phone calls and texts, but Loop Follow will still ring the alerts through at the specific volume level, even if your vibrate switch is turned on. It'll change the volume level up to this. So that is a full walkthrough of loop follow, other than I'm going to flip this, and hopefully that orientation flipped for everyone, just to show you super quick what iPad functionality looks like. So it fully supports split screen in both the 1/4, 3/4, and half mode. And it's hard to do this on the simulator. And it also supports slide over mode, which is fabulous for watching Netflix or video apps, and you need to quickly check your reading. This is really hard to get this on a simulator. So slide over is where you can swipe it in and out from the right side of the screen. So you can be watching your video, and I don't think, yeah, there you go. And just swipe in from the right side of the screen to check your BG and swipe it off. So that is the full walkthrough, and I'm going to turn it back over to you guys.
That it's complicated, or the installation might be complicated. Got any thoughts on that?
I have a full walkthrough tutorial of the build and the install. It's for anyone who's built Loop, it should be a 10 to 15 minute project. All of the, they have Xcode. The computer is already up to date with everything they need. So if you've built Loop, it should not be very difficult. If you haven't built Loop, that's probably going to be a lot more difficult. I am considering making a sort of a BG only non-looper mode that would be really simple for people that just wanted BG with all of the alerts that we have and not necessarily all of the extra data. And that would allow us to make the interface simpler, less options, all of those types of things as well.
My first question, because I'll jump in, is the ability to silence alerts. Does that include the 55 blood sugar alert that comes through Dexcom?
No, so we can't silence the Dexcom alerts, and it's on my daughter's phone, so I don't always hear that one. But unless I'm mistaken, that can't even be stopped with Do Not Disturb, correct?
Right, exactly.
You
So
can't stop the Dexcom.
Unfortunately, we can't do anything about that other app.
Yeah, the one thing I did with my Dexcom was I took every single alert that I could and switched it to vibrate. And then I just hope I don't get the 54 very often. So I sleep all the way through the night.
Okay, so I'm going to start hitting questions, and Cassidy and Sarah, if you want to jump in. I'm going to start with the first one from Glenn, which is, would you also considering adding CV percentage in addition to the standard deviation?
Yeah, we're open to adding what people want. And I say we because I have somebody helping me now with Jose. There's on the GitHub page, there is an issues tab. And if you click that, there's just type in feature requests. And that's what we're using to work through what people want. And so we'll absolutely be able to add that. And you can see there's plenty of space to add more data down in the bottom area. If you've used Spike, they even have the ability to swipe that to see a lot of data down at the bottom.
Now, would you consider a loop follow light version that will work in iOS 12?
That I'm not sure. I would have to go back and look at. I forget offhand the features that I used that were iOS 13 specific. I don't remember what they are. So it would all come down to the complexity of what had to be removed in order to make that happen. And it might be a case where that is essentially the entire light version that might be BG only in the displays without showing all of the Nightscout information as well.
This speaks to a question that seems to have come up a number of times within Facebook chat, which is which devices can Loop Follow be built onto?
I've tested it on iOS 13 on every device that supports iOS 13. So that is going to be the 6S, I believe, and newer. Actually, I can look right now in Xcode.
It doesn't require health, so it will work on the iPad.
Correct.
And I assume it will also work on an iTouch if somebody or what sorry, the non-phone one.
The
But
iPod
Yes.
Touch,
yes,
And
which I seem to be the only person that's really making an attempt at.
yeah, so as long as you can run iOS 13 on it today, it will run fine on it. And I've tested it down to the iPhone SE screen size. So it still does, while it's can be tiny text, it still does support that small of a screen display.
So that begs the question, we hear iOS 14 is coming on like gangbusters really soon. Overriding question is, are we all going to run into a problem with this with Loop? And are you prepared to be able to deal with it?
Yeah, I'm actually following the homebrew situation closely. So it would appear that the only thing stopping people from testing it already is that Homebrew had a hang up with the version number of Big Sur beta. And so I'd expect now that the public beta is out, we should be able to have some of the developers start testing the building of Loop to make sure it builds, it runs, and all of that. iOS 14 does not have a substantial amount of, I guess, behind the scenes changes. It's surface changes. It's the widgets and new home pages and stuff like that. So I actually don't expect there to be much of an issue getting a Loop to run fine on iOS 14. I already am planning to build the widgets for Loop Follow. That's going to be the moment I install the new versions, whether they be in beta to start testing or when they come out in September. We're going to start working on getting widgets so that you can have the BG readings right on the home screen of your iPhone without even having to open the app.
True. Mark had a suggestion early, which is that he'd like it to speak the blood sugar when it's outside of a settable range.
Oh.
And Mark, you're in here, so if you would like to expand on that question while you have John here available to you, feel free to request.
Basically, if it starts to get low or is really high, that's when I want it to be speaking numbers, not all the time. Don't want to burn out on the data.
Yeah, and that's actually a very simple fix or update. So for instance, just like we have on not looping where it's below or above, we can add that to the Speak BG. I'm going to go ahead and type that on to our existing enhancement request that is adding the trend to it.
Okay, and since I have you here for tech support, well, I noticed that there are a whole lot of features that I didn't have from the one I downloaded originally. So I just updated it, and now I'm in the situation where I open it and it immediately closes the screen. Quick suggestions?
Yeah, the biggest help will be if you can send me a screenshot of the full Xcode window when it crashes. So Xcode will highlight the line that causes the crash in red. It'll show all the details at the bottom, and just direct message me that screenshot and maybe your Nightscout URL so that I can open it in the simulator.
Will do.
Thanks, Mark. Glenn asked a good question, which is, can Loop Follow calendar work within a family calendar, like a shared calendar?
Yes, it can. So just when you create the calendar, and let me see. And I actually did not get into that. You need to you really should make a dedicated calendar. If you've used Spike, you know that it left a lot of calendar entries on there that it wasn't able to delete. And I quickly learned why. It's just the nature of writing stuff every 5 minutes to the calendar. So we do make it delete every entry in the selected calendar within like a 2-hour window to ensure that it's not leaving 1,000 entries in your calendar. So when you create it, and I can't do it on the simulator, so I can't show you here, but you will have an option. Let me show you on here. So you'll have an option right under it to say add a person. And so you just add a person, that'll send it to them. They can add it to their iOS calendar. When they add it, they'll want to go into click this little information icon and turn off notifications for it though, because otherwise every 5 minutes their phone will tell them that you sent them a new event.
We got a question from Wes on Facebook. My biggest issue is launching Xcode project instead of XC Workspace. The build will fail.
Correct, because it's built using Loop workspaces. So if you try and open just the project file, it's not going to get the 2 pods that we use, which are Eureka that runs all the setting selections, and the graph pod. So it's if you think about Loop, it would be like the Riley Link module and the Dexcom module and all of those. So you have to open the workspace file in order to build it.
An interesting question. So Loop Follow pulls data from Loop, Dexcom, and Nightscout. Would we need any other apps?
Well, as a parent, I'm always going to have a backup app. Even the app that I wrote and trust, I'm still going to have a backup app. So my phone, and I'll just show you my phone right there. That's what I'm down to now and I have all of my Dexcom follow alerts set slightly lower and slightly higher for the low and the high alerts, so that they're kind of just the backup ones. They're not going off at the same time as Loop Follow. But for something as critical as this, I would always encourage people to have at least one backup to the apps. But short of that, I've gotten rid of Spike, Sugarmate, NS Apple, Night Guard, If This Then That, and Pushover. So in the last month of building this, I've gotten rid of all of the other apps other than Loop Follow.
Okay, Nancy asked, and thank you, Nancy, for retyping it. I was looking for it. Can more than one instance be installed at one time? For instance, if you want to follow more than one person?
Yeah, so it is on our list to do multi-person following. It's a pretty substantial undertaking, and so it's going to be a while. I will just do a quick screen share here of Xcode to show you how to do it. So when you're building and you come in to your signing tab, literally type a number 2 after it or anything else you want after it to make a new bundle identifier. You can also, on the general tab, so the display name is what will be displayed on the app icon, but the bundle identifier is what's behind the scenes. So you can actually change both of these. You could give it your kid's name, Kid 1 and Kid 2, and build it, and then change it for the other kid and build it again, and they'll be completely separated apps.
So I can follow Joanne, Glenn, Sarah, and Tessa's blood sugars at once. This is my dream.
Non-stop
Now I have
alerts.
to look and see if mine's good right now in case Joanne looks.
You got to do what you got to do, Cassie.
Good.
Katie on Facebook asked an interesting question. She's having trouble seeing basal shading on the home screen. She asked, is there a minimum basal rate in order to get that to show? Or is she setting it in the wrong app? Their basal is just over 1/10 of a unit.
Okay, let me show you a setting that I sort of skipped over was the graph settings. There is a minimum basal scale. There's also the same thing applies for BG. And this is, I mentioned it about how much of the graph you wanted to use for basal. It defaults, the default is probably significantly too high. And so come in and set this to 0.5 and see if that solves it. So what 0.5 will do is from the top, and I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the top here to the bottom will be a 0.5 range. So if the basal is 0.1, it should show up sort of right around this area of where the low line is. If that still isn't enough, let me know through GitHub and as an issue, and we'll lower that minimum 0.5 down to something lower that should solve that problem.
Okay, and Wes comes back with, to build on an iPad, is it the exact build instructions that I did on my iPhone?
Exactly the same.
Cool. You're getting a lot of comments of appreciation for all the hard work you put into this. I see
Thank you.
in their heads are going, oh, wow. What we were seeing, the ability to extend the prediction or change the prediction line, the temp alerts, people are just nodding and quite appreciative. Question from Glenn, which is going to be the hot topic here, is, are you following the Mongo database issue?
Yes. There's no need to panic, as Anne would say. I actually have seen a few people that said they already switched it over. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to them to know the validity. I'm going to mute a second. I have a cough. It would appear on the surface that it's as simple as disconnecting Mongo from Heroku and then relinking it, and then converting it to Atlas, which is essentially the newer version that they have, and then relinking it. I haven't tried it myself yet, so I don't really want to take my daughter's live Nightscout data and use that as the test bed for it, but I have no concerns that this entire community won't have this solved long before it gets shut off.
Yeah, I had seen your response on Looped as well, and you are the essence of calm. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're just continuing to get a whole lot of praise. I think you're going to see people loading this week. I know I'm going to give it a try. We got another couple of minutes if anyone has any more questions or you just want to heap praise on Jon. But for my 55 years of diabetes, I just thank you. I can't even imagine the work that goes into this, and we're just leapfrogging from better options to better options, and this is comprehensive, and I actually think I'd be able to do it. So, so thank you. We're getting the same response. If I did see the one question, if I start to build this and I get into trouble, can I reach you? I assume it's through your Facebook page. So
yeah, join the Facebook group. We've had very few problems with people building it, and most were that people tried to open the project file instead of the workspace file. We've had some issues. I think it was Mark just he built a new version and it crashes. Unfortunately, I only have my daughter's data to test. So if I don't experience a crash, I need people to tell me theirs and then look at what is causing it to crash. So, but we've been solving a lot of those to where we're getting very few people even posting on the group saying that it's crashing on them now too.
Yeah, I think some people get a little hung up on linking the Xcode and the GitHub together too, because none of us have ever had to do that before.
And that was something that I forgot about because in my video, because it was just something I had done so long ago. But there's a comment under my build video that lists, it's super simple instructions. And
Yeah,
someone,
I posted instructions on how to do
okay,
it in our group.
I was just going to say somebody posted the instructions in the Facebook group too. So thank you, Mark.
Very wonderful. Thank you. My gosh, thank you for taking time on your Sunday evening. We'll be editing this, so we'll take out all the ums and ahs and be available to you as well to post on your site. Thank you, everybody, for taking your time. We'll see you all on Wednesday night to learn about how you can cope with all this stuff. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks a bunch.
Thanks, John.